Okay, so we began yesterday with Hilchos Shabbos. First, we spoke about is it a deraisa or the Rabbanon? We quoted the Smag that learns it's a deraisa. We paskin it's a Rabbanon. Rashi in Chumash sounds like it's a deraisa. The Ramban says it's a Rabbanon, and that's the Gemara. The Gemara always says Amira L'Nachri Shvus. Shvus means it's a Rabbanon, and that's what we paskin. We spoke about the reasons why Amira L'Akim is also a Rabbanon. Some say it's also because Rashi in Avodah Zarah says V'daber Davar, because we're not allowed to speak about Dvarim Shel Chayil. And when you ask a guy to do malacha for you, you're speaking about Dvarim Shel Chayil, about malacha. So the Rambam says Al Zilzal Shabbos, it's a Zilzal for Shabbos if you have a guy do malacha for you. And we spoke about Rabbi Moshe that says that for that reason timers on Shabbos is aser. He says if Tanoim V'Amiron would be around today, they would aser timers on Shabbos, but you can't aser timers on electricity, on lights, because it's the accepted custom in Klal Yisrael to use timers for lights, but for other things he said definitely one should refrain. Klal Yisrael doesn't paskin like that. Doesn't seem to be like that. The Rashi in Bava Metzia, Rashi in Shabbos says a third reason of why Amir Lakim is also the Rabbanon because of shlichus, and that's why we paskin. It's brought down a Shulchan Aruch here in Reish Mem Gimel that the reason why Amir Lakim is also is because of shlichus, and also because of a daber davar. We paskin like all the reasons in the Chumrah. We saw the nafkaminas. Right? If you ask a guy to do on Shabbos something after Shabbos, there's no problem of shlichus because when he's doing the malach, it's already after Shabbos. But it's a problem of a daber davar because you're asking him on Shabbos, you're speaking about malach on Shabbos. If you're asking him before Shabbos, do it on Shabbos, that's a problem of shlichus because then he's doing the malach on Shabbos, but it's no problem of a daber davar because he's speaking about it before Shabbos. Or if he asks him to do malach and he doesn't end up doing it at all, that's also only a problem of a daber davar because he's asking him on Shabbos, and there's no problem of shlichus because he didn't end up doing it. There are many nafkaminas, and we pass them like all of them l'chumrah. Now, a schir yoin, right? If you hire a guy to do malacha for you on Shabbos, that's called a schir yoin. You're paying him money to do malacha for you on Shabbos. Which problem is that? That's shlichus. He's being your shliach to do malacha for you on Shabbos. So that's awesome me'ikra then. You're not allowed to hire a guy and pay him a daily salary to do malacha for you on Shabbos. It's totally awesome. To do it ba'arisus, to give the guy a percentage of the profits, that's okay. Why? Because then there's a svara of adaita den afsheka of it. The guy is doing it for himself. Because he's concerned that this malacha should be done because he's making profit. So that's adaita den afsheka of it. There he's not considered your shliach, and that's mutter. But there's an additional problem besides of Amir Lakim that Chazal said there's marasayin. That even if you will do it in an oifen shel heter, you'll hire him, for example, ba'arisus, or even better than that, let's say you rent him something, he's not doing it for you at all. You rented him your merchatz, the Gemara speaks about, your bathhouse, and he heats up the bath on Shabbos, and smoke comes up, and everybody sees that your bathhouse is being heated up on Shabbos, and they think that you hired him to do it for you. And really, what you did was you rented it to him. He's doing it for himself. He's paying you rent. So really, there's no essential problem of Amir Lakim. So what's the problem? The problem is marasayin, because people are not going to know that you rented it to him. That's a problem of marasayin. Chazal said there's marasayin and Amir Lakim, and therefore they answered it. Unless it's nisparsim, people know that you rented it to him. It's nisparsim. People know you rented it to him. There's a shayla in the Hilchos Yitzchak. I think we mentioned yesterday. The Hilchos Yitzchak says that someone asked him if he has a store he wants to rent to a guy. Until now he had this grocery, and now he wants to rent it out to a guy, and he's going to work in it, and he's going to keep it open on Shabbos, obviously. And the question was, is he allowed to rent it to a guy? Because people don't necessarily know that he rented it to a guy. People are going to think the guy is working for him on Shabbos. That's Amir Lakim. So the Hilchos Yitzchak says that what he should do is he should close down shop for a month, advertise it in all the newspapers that he closed down, and then let the guy reopen it and rent it to the guy. So this way it's nisparsim. Right? It's interesting, there's a tshuva of the Maram Shik. The Maram Shik says, let's say if you own property, you own a room, and on Leicester Road or Leicester Street, I'm not sure what it's called. And I guess that's a street where it's a prime location to have a supermarket, and you have just a room there, and you want to rent it to a guy that's going to open a shop there, and he's going to work on Shabbos. So Ramshik says there's no problem also in Marasayan. Why? Because since you never had it, you only had an empty space there, and you never owned it as a grocery shop or anything like that. So now when it opens, people are gonna be mevarer, and they're gonna look into it, and they're gonna see, oh, the guy is really the one that's opening it up, and he's working for himself, and there's no Marasayan on that either. That's no Ramshik Paskins. Another way where there's no Marasayan, as mentioned in the Chaber, if minig roiv anshe oisa makam laskiram, if the minig of most people in town is to rent this particular thing that you're renting to a guy, and nowadays and age it will be, let's say, a car. You want to rent your car. Everyone knows it's your car. It has the baby on board sign inside the windshield and whatever, and you have your own things in the car, and people recognize your car. So it would be Marasayan to rent it to a guy for Shabbos, because the guy is not going to know that, nobody's going to know that you rented it to a guy. People are going to think that the guy is driving for you. He's on a mission, he's a shliach for you to do some work on Shabbos, and people are going to think, oh, you're Ivan Amir Lakim. But since the derech ha'olam is to rent cars nowadays, so you can rent your car to a guy even if he's going to drive it on Shabbos, because there is no Marasayan, people are going to assume naturally that you rented it to him, because that's the derech. The derech is to rent cars nowadays. The Ramah brings another case of where there's no Marasayan. The Ramah says, if let's say you have, the Ramah's case is speaking about a bathhouse, you have a bathhouse in your house, you have a mikveh in your house or whatever it is, and you want to rent it to a guy, right? And the guy is gonna use it on Shabbos, he's gonna do malacha there on Shabbos. So since nobody knows what's going on inside your house, it's bechadri chadarim, so there's no problem Marasayan, people don't know. So that's also another case of where you avoid the problem of Marasayan. We're speaking about Marasayan. I want to mention tshuva for Rav Moshe. I think this tshuva for Rav Moshe is going to blow you away. You see Rav Moshe's gadlus, and you see Rav Moshe's anivus in this tshuva. Rav Moshe's derech was, it's an Orach Chaim Chelek Aleph Simat Tzarivov. Rav Moshe's derech was that he lived in the Lower East Side and in Manhattan, and he used to drive from his house to yeshiva 2 minutes, like 3 minutes before Shabbos. Now, in New York, the derech is to be Mekabel Shabbos 18 minutes before Shabbos, Taisvis Shabbos. Right? So, you have to imagine Rav Moshe driving in a car, being driven in a car 2 minutes before Shabbos. That's after every woman lit Shabbos candles with Mekabel Shabbos. So for all practical purposes, it looks like Shabbos is already in, and Rav Moshe is being driven in a car, and it looks like he's being driven on Shabbos. So a fellow sent him a letter, and he rebuked Rav Moshe. He said, you should know that you're over on Marasayan. People think that you're transgressing Shabbos. So I want to read you Rav Moshe's lashon when he wrote him back. You can see it's unbelievable. He says, "Nehanesi ma'od, I had great pleasure. Asher malas kvoidoi nizdaras l'kayim mitzvahs techacha, that you were so eager to be mekayim the mitzvah of techacha. Ufidaitoi, according to what you understand, it's techacha because I did something wrong. It's true as chein l'malas kvoidoi v'chaz v'sholmi l'hakpaz. I'm not even makpad that you gave me techacha. V'myirtza Hashem b'li nedar." I will never go into a car again because of the techacha you gave me. Bekar, even though Rav Moshe tells him he's about to write in the tshuva, there's nothing wrong, not even Marasayan. Now, why is there no Marasayan in such a thing? Why is there no Marasayan in Rav Moshe's case? So Rav Moshe here says he is soid in Marasayan, which we have to know. And Rav Moshe says, Donnie, why isn't Marasayan?
Because it's Rav Moshe.
Because it's Rav Moshe. Very nice. So are you saying Rav Moshe would be allowed to rent to a guy as well? Because because everyone knows Rav Moshe nobody would be choshed him. Rav Moshe says something a heter which would apply even to us, even though we're not Rav Moshe. Rav Moshe says like this. Rav Moshe says, what is Marasayan? Marasayan is when you're doing something which people could mistakenly think that you did it be'isr. For example, people see a guy is working in your field, and they have two ways to explain why this guy is working in your field. One is because you hired him to work for you, and the other is because you rented the field to the guy. You leased it to the guy. So each one is a logical conclusion, right? And on the tzad that you actually rented it to the guy, you're okay, but on the tzad that you hired the guy, you're not okay, right? So people have a right to assume that you hired the guy instead of renting it to the guy. That's Marasai. Because people might assume that you hired the guy. He says, when I'm driving in the car Erev Shabbos, 2 minutes before Shabbos, why do you think I'm Mechal Shabbos? Because you're an Am Haaretz. You don't know that it's not Shabbos yet. Go look at your calendar and take a look. Is it Shabbos or not? In other words, you're making a mistake in simple halacha. There's no maris ayin on someone if people are going to be choshim that he's doing something wrong because that person doesn't know the halacha. There's no such thing as maris ayin on that. It's when the person knows the halacha and he can logically assume that al pi halacha you're doing something asur, that's when there's maris ayin. Al pi halacha you're not allowed to hire a guy to work in your field. And maybe you hired him. That's a logical conclusion. Al pi halacha, that's maris ayin. But because you're lazy, because you never learned, or because you don't know what time shkia is, right? So you think that I'm being Mechal Shabbos, that's not Maris Ayin. He says, Rabbi Moshe finishes the tshuva, he says, Kivin Shemal is Kvoid, the Kaisef, Shiez v'chaz Shalom, Kilkel, Eze Noshim, V'anoshim, Shiedamu, L'medja, Shiez b'zezul, L'Shabbos Kodesh, Erebeli Neder, Shalai, L'Isayit v'karim Shazal Lakas Neres, Yedida ha'mavarcha b'schus mitzvus ha'techocha shekiyim l'kavod Hashem yizbarach l'kavod Shabbos Kodesh v'shefa bracha sheboy dekim shmir Shabbos l'sukas v'sholem.
Why did Rabbi Moshe not keep the 18 minutes?
The 18 minutes is for Adlakas Neris. That's when women are Mekabel Shabbos. Adlakas Neris. We're not Mekabel Shabbos. Men are Mekabel Shabbos with Mizmor Shir Yom Shabbos. They're not Mekabel Shabbos Adlakas Neris. But again, you're right. For us, there's also a mitzvah of Teisus Shabbos. But for a man, usually it's with Mizmor Shir Yom Shabbos, and you have to be careful to say that before Shkia, at least a second or a minute. There's no shir. Mitzvah Teisus Shabbos, even the Mechaber says, even a kol shul, even a mashal. So anyway, so that's the Yisod of Marazayin. Since we're discussing Marazayin, I want to share with you that people shouldn't mistakenly think that if, any guy who just thinks you're doing something other, then you're over Marazayin. It's not so. We saw there are two other conditions that if you rent to a guy, there are two other conditions that you need to be allowed to rent to a guy. We saw that you need also, it shouldn't be on Erev Shabbos. If you rent it to a guy, it shouldn't be on Erev Shabbos on Friday. We'll get to that in Simulation Vav. The reason for that is also because Marasayin, because you rent him on Friday, it's like you're advocating it to him to use it for Shabbos. That's it, is it Marasayin. The other Tanai condition you need if you rent to a guy anything of yours, is that you shouldn't charge him for it a daily charge because there's a problem with Schar Shabbos. You can't make money on your products on Shabbos. So we discussed cars. If you rent your car to a guy, there's no problem of Schar Shabbos because it's done by Havlaw. Because usually, the way the rent a cars work is if you take it, from the time you take it, that's when it starts 24 hours, and you pay for the day from the time you take it, and that's already b'chayil. That's still b'chayil. Okay. Now, the end of the Simulation Megillah will discuss something very interesting. Simulation Megillah will discuss what if somebody was over and rented to a guy and was over on Marasayin and Schar Shabbos. The guy transgressed. He rented his object to a guy and he was over on Marasayin and Schar Shabbos. What's the halacha with that money? He rented his merchatz or his soda, his car, to a guy who was over on Marasayin and two Yisur D'Rabbanan. One is Marasayin and one is Schar Shabbos. Could he use that money? So the Ramah brings 2 days. The Ramah says, Im avar v'hiskira b'makam ha'asr, yesh aimrim she'scharim mutter. Some say that it's mutter. V'yesh aimrim she'asr. Some say that it's asr. The Mishnah Berurah right away says there's no machlekes here. They're each talking about two different asurim. The yesh aimrim she'scharim mutter deal when you weren't over on Schar Shabbos. You did it in an official heter. You did it b'havlaw. The only thing you were over was in Maris Ayin. So there, the schara is mutter. If you rented your field to a guy, and there was no problem with schar Shabbos because you charged him for the whole week, you didn't just charge him for Shabbos alone, but you were over marasayin, there schara is mutter. But if you rented your field to a guy and you were over on schar Shabbos, that means you charged him for Shabbos itself, there it's schara aser. What's the difference? Because marasayin is only a chumrah. It's a chumrah, it's not an ikra din. So there, the chachamim, here we paskin l'kulam, that if you're actually over on it, you made money, you could use that money and enjoy. But if you're over on schar Shabbos, that's an ikra din. The Rabbanan aser schar Shabbos gzeira atu mekech memker. People shouldn't come to make money on Shabbos because then they might come to actually do business on Shabbos. So there, they asered it. Now it's very interesting. We know usually when a guy does malacha for a yid on Shabbos, he's not allowed to have a no from it. It's called Ma'aser Shabbos. He's not allowed to have a no from a guy that did malacha. If a guy turned on a light for you on Shabbos, you can't have a no from the light. We'll get there. You can't have a no from a malecha's guy. Till when can't you have a no? Till Matzah Shabbos. Kedei sheyasu. That means if he turned on a light for you, it takes 1 second to turn on a light, you wait after Shabbos 1 second, then afterwards you're good to go. Here, it's very interesting. Here, if you made money on Shabbos, be'isr, schar Shabbos, you can never use it. The Rishonim say, the Ritva says, you have to be zeriket liyam, to throw it away. Why is this different? Why don't we say, wait kadesh yasu? Wait. How long did it take you to make the money? An hour? So you wait an hour after Shabbos and then use the money. Why is there no kadesh yasu on this? So the reason is, because kadesh yasu isn't just Xeris HaKosov. There's a svar to Kadesh Yasu. Kadesh Yasu means that I'm going to wait the amount of time that it takes for someone to do this malacha, and once I wait that amount of time, then I'm not having a no anymore from the malacha that was done on Shabbos, because at that amount of time after Shabbos, I could have done the malacha myself. So because I could have done the malacha myself after Shabbos, so then it's not considered as if I'm having a no from the malacha that was done on Shabbos, because at that time I could have done the malacha myself after Shabbos. So that takes care of the problem of Noam and Melech Shabbos. But what are you going to do with profits? Right? You made a profit on Shabbos. You're going to wait an hour after Shabbos. An hour after Shabbos, you could have made more profit. That's a new profit you could have made. Right? That profit that you made on Shabbos, that profit could never be made again. You can't wait an hour after Shabbos and make that profit again, because whatever profit you would have been making the hour after Shabbos would have been a new profit. So you'll always be having a no from the profit that you made on Shabbos, even if you wait an hour. And that's why it's awesome. It's not just true with Schar Shabbos, it's true also, let's say, with example the place we're speaking about would be, let's say, with pictures that were taken on Shabbos. There's a real problem, right? A guy takes a picture on Shabbos from a Yid, right? And he did it for the Jew. And then he waits, after Shabbos, the amount of time that it takes to take a picture, and that's Kadesh Yasu, and then he's allowed to have a no from the picture. That's wrong. Because that picture never could have been taken again after Shabbos. That would have been a different picture. That would have been a different picture. Right? Some people go to the Kaisel and whatever, they get photographed and then they leave. I mean, what, are you going to wait after Shabbos where? In Manchester, I'm saying it's not going to help you. You wouldn't have been able to take the picture at the Kaisel. And whatever picture you would have been able to take, it would have been a different picture. So, I remember once I was eating Friday night 2 years ago by my great uncle. He's the Gaivet of the Eida Charedis. The head of the Eida Charedis. He's my uncle through marriage. He's married to my great aunt. So the week before there was a big Afghana, and the Eida Charedis went, and a lot of Hasidim went, and the Chalonim, they took pictures, of all the people there, Kikar Shabbos, and they put it to the newspapers. So we asked them, Friday night, are we allowed to actually look at the pictures in the newspapers? Because we know it was taken on Shabbos. And it was taken on Shabbos, it's Asur B'Hana. So it's not going to help you to wait Kadesh Yasu, because that would have been a different picture. The Afghana was on Friday night, so you're going to wait after Shabbos, when Kikar Shabbos is empty. You couldn't have taken that picture again. So this is a real Shiloh. So he shared a story with us. He said that one time a fellow brought him a tape, a recording of the Satmar Rebbe, Rabbi Yoel. He brought him a recording. Someone, I guess, disguised the recorder in some way, and he left it on the whole Shabbos to record the Satmar Rebbe's, drashos, by Shalosh Shudas, or whatever it is, over Shabbos. And now the question was, is he allowed to have enough from it after Shabbos? So really, with the recording, nothing really, no one did a malacha for you. It was electricity, I'm saying. It was a timer that, turned it on or whatever, or either he left it on from before Shabbos. But he said even that he would ask her because of Chil Hashem, because then it encourages people to do such type of things. I remember the Baba of a Rebbe, Reb Shlomo, he was makbid. Sometimes people shouldn't tape him, and the Chassidim, they found a way out. They took a siddur, and somehow they got rid of the inside, and it looked like outside looked like just the cover of a siddur, and got a tape recorder in there, and they always put it next to him. It looked like a siddur. I think one time he actually opened it up. He wanted to use the siddur, and he found a tape recorder in there. But you somehow you disguise these things for the Rebbe's, and then you have the recording, which was over Shabbos, if you're allowed to listen to it or not. So he said, even if no one turned it on the tape recorder for you. But certainly, if a guy, took a picture from you on Shabbos, a lot of times, you have the shaila after, your bar mitzvah was taken, and some people have pictures from the bar mitzvah was taken by a guy for them on Shabbos. You have to know, you have to ask, are you allowed to have a no from it at a later date? That's like Schar Shabbos, because Schar Shabbos also, you can't have a Kedesh Yasu on it. So this is what I'm trying to bring up. The point I'm trying to say is because you can't have a Kedesh Yasu. There's another very important thing I wanted to speak about. The Mishnah Berurah says that this whole problem of Maras Ayin, renting to a guy, right, is the problem of Maras Ayin. That's only to a guy. But renting to a Yid, a field that you're certain the Yisrael Mummer, someone who's not from, is going to do malacha on that soda on Shabbos. That's not just a problem of Maras Ayin. It's a much more basic problem. Problem of Lifnei Iver. Lifnei Iver l'sitan mechshel. So this Mishnah Berurah is a huge chiddush. Mishnah Berurah is telling you you're not allowed to rent to a Yisrael Mummer something which he might be using. He might be doing malacha with on Shabbos, because that's Lifnei Iver. According to this Mishnah Berurah, it should be that you're not allowed to rent an apartment. If you own real estate, you want to rent your apartment to a Yisrael Mummer, to someone who's not from, it should be also because of Lifnei Iver, because you might turn on electricity on Shabbos.
It's not direct there.
Right, with the soda, when you rent someone a soda, no one lives in the soda and then randomly works it. Whereas within a house, you live in it and you do malacha in the house. A soda is for malacha.
A soda is for malacha by a house.
So when you give someone a soda, you are saying it's much more direct.
You're advocating malacha on Shabbos, whereas
a house you don't have to do malacha.
the house you don't have to do malacha in. There's no malacha. I'm saying it comes at night. He's not going to turn on the lights. He's saying it's not made. It's not made for
malacha. Whereas a soda, its primary function is to work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that could be a svara.
Shouldn't it also include selling? Why would selling be different from renting?
Because selling, they say is svara because it's not yours anymore. It's not yours. The lifnei iver l'sitan is you're helping you, you're giving him something that belongs to you.
Why is that?
Why is that any worse? Even selling selling should be the same thing. I hear. It should be the same thing, but the reason why all this is not a problem is simple, because I'm saying, right, we're not going to start asking people to sell real estate to people that are chashed to Mechal Shabbos. The reason why it's not a problem is because the Gemara of the Zohar says the only time there's Lifnei Iver is if he couldn't have done this Isser without you. Right, the classic case is Trey Aver de Nahara, if he's standing on one side of the river and the other guy's on the other side of the river. So, since he couldn't have gotten to this Kais Yayin, this Nazir, couldn't have gotten the cup of wine without you, without your intervention, without your help, that's why it's not a problem. That's why it's a problem with Lifnei Iver. But here, if he's not going to turn on your lights in your apartment, he's going to be in his house and he's going to be turning on lights in his house. So he's going to be turning on lights and he's going to rent from someone else.
So he's going to rent the field from someone else.
Right, correct. So the Mishnah Berurah has to be talking about in a case where he couldn't have rented a field from anybody else. That's l'chari what the Mishnah Berurah is talking about. But there's a very interesting Madane Eretz. You know who wrote the Madane Eretz? Anyone know who wrote the Madane Eretz? Sefer Madane Eretz. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach wrote a Sefer Madane Eretz. And in that Sefer, it's on Shvi, it's on Shemitah, in that Sefer he writes that even if a person couldn't have gotten to the thing that he's doing an Isser with, without your intervention, you're still allowed to give it to him, if when you're doing it, what you're doing is you're doing it before Shabbos, before the Zman Isser. when you're giving it to him, it's still not usher. For example, are you allowed to sell food to Yisrael Mummer? Are you allowed to sell food to Yisrael Mummer before Yom Kippur? You know he's going to eat the food of Yom Kippur. Are you allowed to sell him food? Is that Elf Neiver? So let's say, okay, so you're going to say, well, if I'm not going to sell it to him, you can get it from somebody else. So it's no Elf Neiver because you can get it from somebody else. But let's say you're in a town and you're the only grocery open. It's already so late and he's not going to be able to get it from anybody else. And now you are facilitating him eating the food for him to be able to eat on Yom Kippur. Is that a problem? So Shlomo Zalman says no, because since when you're giving it to him, it's still before Yom Kippur, it's before this Mana Isser, there's no problem. Are you allowed to sell chametz to a yid right before Pesach when you know he's going to use that chametz and eat it on Pesach? Is there either? If you couldn't have gotten this food from somebody else. Shlomo Zalman says no.
It's different. It should be different because you can't even own it. I'm saying if you buy food on Erev Shabbat, on Erev Yom Kippur, right?
Yeah.
You could not eat it and have it after Yom Kippur, but on Pesach you can't even own it, so it should be even worse. That could be also allowed.
It should be right. It should be worse. It's definitely worse because of that svara. But you still have the svara from Zalman that because it's still koydem zmana iser, because when you're giving it to him, it's before it's aser, before the zmana iser, then it's okay. It's worse than what?
Why should because before the zmana iser make a difference? You're still going to lead him to iser.
It's obvious. That would mean if you would say that to the extreme, that then you wouldn't be able to ever sell anyone grapes. Shema, they might become a nazir and then eat them.
Oh. No, that's different because that's a Kabbalah where everyone has to be paid for.
Well, that's a Shema, but what if we know that in Kippur is coming tomorrow? That's a bar. That's a vada. You know, another sniffle hakol would be you don't know if the guy's actually going to eat it on Yom Kippur. You're not sure. You're not sure. You know, a lot of people. Not only that, a lot of people, as you know, look like they're not Shema Torah mitzvahs. They are. I once had a guy in Eretz Yisrael. He came to. I think was fixing my washing machine, and I offered him a cup of water, whatever, a drink. And I'm always careful. The Shulchan Aruch says you should always, if you're offering someone to drink, you should make sure they make a bracha. Otherwise, you're over either. Give a guy a drink, he doesn't make a bracha, you're over either. So at least learn with them. So I always say, okay, so I always tell them, listen, I want you to make a bracha in my house. It's a chus for me to have a bracha in this house. And this guy caught on to my shtick. And he was very offended. He's like, "What? You chayshid me? I'm not going to make a bracha? Of course I'm going to make a bracha." And he pulls out a couple and he makes a bracha with kavanah, right? A lot of times, they're misleading. You think they're not going to make a bracha, they're not going to be Shem Shabbos. A lot of times you don't have the problem of neighbor because it is a real suffix whether the chalal will be every Shabbos, the chalal Shabbos to begin with or not. There is, and this will finish off with this, is a very interesting truth for Rabbi Moshe about a shaila was asked if a person who owned a wedding hall, and he wanted to rent the wedding hall to some yidden which weren't from, and he was certain that there was going to be a lack of tznius at the wedding. So he's facilitating them this wedding hall for mixed dancing or whatever it might be, and that's lofnei iver. So he asked Rabbi Moshe if he's allowed to, and there Rabbi Moshe says a huge chiddush. He says you're allowed to, but it's a huge chiddush. Not everybody agrees with him. He says that whenever you're giving something to someone, and that something isn't necessarily designated to be over an isser with, right? A chasana hall, the purpose of a chasana hall is for a lack of tznius. You sit down, you have food, you have a chuppah, right? And then they can decide to also use it in a way where it's that's inappropriate. He says that's not lefnei iver. Lefnei iver means you're giving him something which is miyuchad la'avera. You're giving a cup of wine to a nazir. Nazir, there's nothing for him to do with that cup of wine except drink it and be over an isser. But if I'm giving you an apartment, right, and you could live and you could use the apartment for dvarim shel heter, and you decide, to turn on the light on Friday night, that's not lefnei iver. Not everybody agrees with this, Rabbi Moshe, but that's definitely another sniff lahakel to be able to do this.
You have a maris ayin now, tonight that you publicize it after the Shabbos.
If at the time that you're renting it out, you're being over maris ayin?
Yeah, but then you publicize it after.
Not that I know of. I don't think so. No. I don't think Shulchan Aruch was the Shalacha in Hilchos Shabbos. It makes sense that you shouldn't be able to do that because at the time being there's a maris ayin. we'll clarify it afterwards. I don't think so. Okay, I think we're late already.